You know, there's nothing quite better than making homemade bread. You get all these incredible aromas that come out of your oven, and it truly is such a rewarding experience. The problem is sometimes it can get very difficult. You gotta use yeast, which is an ingredient certain people are very uncomfortable with. You gotta let that dough rise for a couple hours at the right temperature. Knead it for 10 to 15 minutes. Today, you can throw that all out the window. I'm gonna show you how to make one of the easiest bread recipes at home. We're talking homemade rosemary bread rolls. These bread rolls have the most incredible textures and flavors, and they go perfect with a little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil, or you can even spread some butter on them, top it off with some honey for a sweet and savory snack. Either way you go, the flavors here are gonna completely blow you away. But the best part about this recipe is that it's very easy to make, uses the most basic pantry staples. Like I'm pretty sure as you're watching this, you're gonna have all these ingredients in your pantry, and you don't need any special equipment or tricky baking skills. Let's begin by adding in 3 cups of all-purpose flour into a large bowl. Now to make this recipe, you can use a couple different other flours, such as whole wheat flour, bread flour, or even self-rising flour. If you do use self-rising flour, make sure to omit the rising agent I'll be adding. For the next ingredient, I'm going to add in 3 teaspoons of baking powder. If you don't have baking powder, you can substitute these 3 teaspoons for a mixture of 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda mixed in with 1.5 teaspoons of lemon juice. We'll add in 3/4 of a teaspoon of fine sea salt and 1 tablespoon of dried rosemary. And mix this all together. That way all the ingredients are evenly mixed together. This is such an important step. That way when you bake your bread rolls, they all rise evenly. Once everything's well mixed, I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. This is such an important ingredient. This is the base fat of the bread, and it's what gives it that incredible texture and flavor. And also add in 1 cup of cold water. And start mixing everything together until you start forming a dough. The texture you want from this dough is you want it to be slightly sticky. So if you see that yours is a little bit too much, add a little bit more flour in there. And vice versa, if it's a little too dry, add in a little bit more water. Once all the ingredients are well mixed and you end up with a dough, get in there with your hands and lightly knead it inside of the bowl just for about 30 seconds. This is to ensure that all the ingredients are perfectly combined together. Then I'm going to shape the dough into the form of a ball. Sprinkle some all-purpose flour on a clean flat surface. Add the ball of dough on top. Cut it into 2 evenly sized pieces. And once again, shape each piece of dough into the form of a ball. And for the final step with the dough, I'm going to cut each ball into 6 evenly sized pieces to end up with a total of 12 pieces of dough. And we'll shape each piece of dough into the form of a ball. For the next step, I'm going to grease a round baking pan with a little extra virgin olive oil and brush it all around. That way when you add the pieces of dough in there and you add them into the oven, they don't stick to the baking pan. Now you can also use a square baking pan or even a rectangular one. Just try to use a smaller one. That way when you add the pieces of dough in there, they're nice and compact. That is the secret to giving these pieces of dough that beautiful rise. Then we'll brush the tops of the dough with a kiss of extra virgin olive oil. And sprinkle them with some dried rosemary. And we'll add our baking pan into a preheated oven. I've had the oven preheating for about 20 minutes. It's on the bake only option. That's just the bottom heat, 210 degrees Celsius, which is 425 degrees Fahrenheit. After exactly 20 minutes, I'm going to change the setting in the oven to the bake and broil option. That's the bottom and top heat, and go for about 5 minutes. This gives a beautiful crust to the tops of the breads. If your oven doesn't have both functions, no big deal. Just bake them for an extra 3 to 4 minutes more than I'm baking mine. Exactly 25 minutes after adding the baking pan into the oven, these bread rolls should be perfectly cooked. That's 20 minutes in the oven and 5 minutes with the broiler. I'm gonna remove them from the oven. Remove the bread rolls from the baking pan. Mine has a little snap-on in there. That way you can easily remove them. If you just have a standard one, you just place a plate over the baking pan, flip it, and those bread rolls will easily come out. Detach the bread rolls from each other, and as you can see, they're easily removed. And add the bread rolls into a serving basket. Check it out, our homemade rosemary bread rolls are done. You saw this, so easy to make. Just 10 minutes of prep time, incredible aromas coming out of this. Let's give them a try and see how they turned out. Like I told you at the beginning of the video, the aromas in the kitchen right now are mind-blowing good. Cannot wait to try this. Here we go. Beautiful texture. So good. You have that extra virgin olive oil marinated with that rosemary. It is absolutely delicious. And as for the texture, we didn't use the yeast, so it's not a typical airy bread like a baguette. We used that baking powder, so it's a lot denser, but it doesn't matter. Textures are absolutely beautiful. You saw this, just 10 minutes of prep work. It doesn't get better than this. Done in about 35 minutes with the baking time. Make this bread at home, I guarantee you're gonna absolutely love it. Really quick before I go, a shout out to one of my patrons, Michael and Kelly Thompson. Once again, guys, thank you so much for being patrons of Spain on a Fork. You know how much I appreciate you. For the rest of you, if you're not with me on Patreon, consider becoming one. It helps with ingredients and equipment to continue making videos like this. You'll find my Patreon link in the description box below and iCard above. If you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button. Leave me a comment below, and if you're not subscribed, smash that subscribe button. Till the next time, hasta luego.